Hey folks, welcome back to some of our introductory material. Here, what we're going to be focusing on is how to access your ebook, how to access your homework, and how the whole system works. So first, I'm here in Module 0. We've got kind of our general instructions here. Obviously, the video we're shooting now is going to replace this one. We have a course key here. That's one of the first things you're going to need in order to get access to this specific course material. There's also an attached set of registration instructions you can download, which includes a direct link to the course material. You will need an access code to access Cengage, and then from there, again, you're going to access the course materials on Mindtap. So there are some short videos here on using the overall framework, but I think it's better that we have our own video here and we talk about our own stuff. So I am logged in. I have access to the course's materials. So this is just kind of a brief walkthrough of what the Mindtap system is going to look like. So first things first, it's probably going to look a little different for you because this is an instructor version. It's hard for me to simulate what it looks like for you, but one thing you're probably not going to be able to see is this grade book over here where we look at who's completed what. You're all averaging a 0 right now, by the way. I expect that number to go up. Nobody's completed anything. Anyway, so what Cengage does in the Mindtap system is it centralizes a lot of the materials for including the textbook, related assignments, and resources, and kind of lets you tackle it all in one interface instead of bouncing from site to site. So a large portion of where you're going to be working from is going to be a framework that's probably going to look pretty similar to this. Some small differences there. But here we see the material from the textbook, and it's grouped up into different sorts of parts, each one of which has different activities attached. So what you'll find in here is both your textbook itself, access to that, and the homework and supplemental materials that are attached to that. So let's look through some of this. Let's open part 1 here. Part 1, we have a brief introductory statement every time a part begins, a new part of the textbook begins. We also have a little summary that'll come at the end. So the idea is to go through sequentially, but if we click on this, we see here's part 1, introduction. Let's load it up. And basically, it's just a brief description of what's going on. It's a good idea to review these and to just go through everything in sequence. Most of what we're going to be doing, of course, though, is our different chapters. So again, the syllabus will tell you which chapters correspond to which modules. Make sure you check that because these parts don't directly match with our units. They do in part 1, and then after that, it breaks down a little bit differently. So let's look at chapter 1 here. We open it up. We find the very first thing is the chapter itself. So let's click on that for a moment, and that's just going to take you to the chapter in the ebook that corresponds to that module. So notice we have kind of a table of contents here. We have a bunch of different links. You can go directly to each section, which can really help with studying. If there's a concept you want, you don't have to thumb through the book. You can just go find the link to it. But over here, we also can kind of use these arrows to go back and forth. So let's go ahead a little bit. We see some general instructions about resources. Now we're in the paper itself, the chapter itself. So a couple of things to note. If you want to mouse over text, you can actually take notes as you go. So we can highlight this. We have 4 different colors and one that I guess is shared. Let's make it pink. Why not? Make it cute. The other thing that you can do is you can highlight and you can add a note. So for example, I could say, little note to myself to remember, and again there's a sharing option there that I'm not too familiar with. And then when you mouse over it, we've got a little sticky note there, and we open it up and it says, hey, this is important later. Some other things you can do, it will read the text for you aloud, so that can help sometimes, especially if you're having vision problems or monitor problems. You also can create a new flashcard. This system actually gives you some flashcards for key terms, and you can add new ones in there with information that isn't covered by them if you like. And again, we can continue kind of bouncing forward. We can see some different definitions. We start to see, again, some more specific terminology. And you're going to want to read through this as one of the very first things that you do. Just read the chapter. I always, always, always recommend you read the chapter before you view each lecture. So, as you probably know, a lot of the material in this course can be kind of confusing. The first time you hear it, it's probably going to be confusing, especially for more complicated stuff. Maybe not so much chapter 1, but maybe chapter 6, chapter 8, chapter 11. It's a good idea to get introduced to it in the book itself in a more thorough sense. And then some of it will make sense, some of it will make half sense, some of it you just feel like, I have no idea what's happening. But you'll start to get familiar with the different terminology. Then you can take a little pre-lecture quiz, which is described here. Notice that we have some flags for things that count towards your grades and things that do not. Each time we have a pre-lecture quiz, it's intended to be taken before you view the lectures. I obviously can't monitor that. Actually, I probably could, but it would take way more effort than I want to put in there. And you have that flexibility. So take the pre-lecture quiz generally before the lecture and get a little bit of sense of what your comfort level is with the material. Then when you view the lecture, this will be the second time you're hearing about these ideas and concepts, and you can see how I describe it to you, the examples I give, and what areas we're going to focus on as well. And then you can go back and reread the material a little later on. But notice each chapter has 5 sort of tasks, but only 3 of them count towards your grade. 2 of them, what we call mastery training. This is pretty much memorizing terms and learning how to link them with some basic recognition in there as well. It's a little tedious, which is why I didn't want to require it, but it's a good idea if you really want that extra kind of push towards, at least remembering basic terms and how they sort of represent themselves in research designs. There's also some supplemental questions here. What gets graded is your pre-lecture quiz, your overall assignment here it's just the name of the chapter, and then there's a practice exam at the end of that material before you move on as well. Notice all of these are due at the very, very end of the session, 11:59, August 8th. You do not want to put them off until anywhere near that point. You really want to be, you want to be starting chapter 1 today, and ideally finishing it today. One of the things you'll notice is that there is something like 14 different chapters, and you're going through them in 5 weeks, so do the math. You're going to want to go through about 3 a week to be ready and fully studied up for the final. And the first week, you might even want to be a little faster than that because the material is a little bit shorter. So we have all this work to do. Again, as I mentioned in the syllabus section, I'm still learning the system. It's a new one. So one of the things that I'm learning is how to edit specific items. I haven't been able to do that yet. So there are some items in the book and some items in the homework that aren't going to be covered in the lecture. 2 things about that. One of them is I'm only going to test you on what I talk about in the lecture. The book is a supplement to that. If there's a concept or an idea that is present in the book that we don't talk about in those modules, it isn't going to come up. It's not going to come up on the exam. The other one is, as I mentioned in the syllabus video, I'm building in a little bit of a buffer for that sort of thing, for being assessed on things that I'm not instructing you about in the videos. And the way that buffer works is if you complete 90% of the assignments over the course of the session, I will add 10% to your final homework grade. You can't go over 100, but you'll get an extra 10% on there. So it's a really good idea to keep up with this, both for grade purposes. This is about the easiest way to get points in the course, even though it's a little time consuming. And also because it's going to prepare you for that harder stuff, the quizzes and exams that most of your grade is going to be based on. So it's a really, 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 really good idea to keep up with this and to keep working at it. You really, in particular, want to earn as many points as you can in as low stress of a way as possible. Set aside time, work on this at least every weeknight, keep plugging away, and then you can come back to it to do some other work as well. So I haven't really shown you much of these, I guess. Let's look at, say, our pre-lecture quiz, and most of them look pretty similar to this. It's going to give me a full screen with usually some multiple choice, sometimes some very short answers. Notice it'll tell you a little bit about instructions. You can keep retaking assignments. If you don't like your grade, go retake it, and you can potentially boost that a little bit. But we have a term here, what terms used to identify the entire group of individuals we want to study. So that is going to be a population. Notice you can check your work at any point. It will tell you if it's correct or not. There's always that brief sweat moment where I'm like, did I misread it and get it wrong on video? But let's get one wrong and see what happens here. Smaller groups. Those smaller groups are called samples. I'm going to call them statistics instead. Let's check that work, and it says incorrect. And then we can go through and get it correct. And now we've got it right. So it's a pretty low stakes environment, but it is going to take a lot of time. There are a lot of questions to go through. When I'm done with everything, notice I have a running score up here. I can submit my assignment for grading. Now your actual homework grade is going to be the percentage score that you see in the grade book. Notice that different things are worth different numbers of points. So that's going to potentially affect your average a bit, but the number that's in there as your overall average, that is your current homework grade. And again, at the end of the session, if you are keeping up with your homework, will have 10% added to that. So notice everything's due at the same time, August 8th. There's also some problem demonstrations down here. There's some tutorials that can help you with some of the different calculations involved in there. Lots and lots of additional stuff that is not required for your grade, but is available if you are having difficulty with the material, as most people do at some point or another. So we can see that then we go down to part 2. We've got different chapters in here. It keeps going. It's the same general kind of structure, different demonstrations, etc. Now, that's the bulk of what you're going to be doing. That's sort of your command center. It's how you're going to take your assignments and do your readings. But there's some other stuff over here, and again, I assume I have a couple more options that you do not. You can look at your content. If you've made notes, you can summarize those notes quickly. There's an RSS feed, which is semi-dated. I'm not sure how effective that is. There's a glossary for terminology. There's some other stuff. If you just want to go to the full book, you can just go to the full ebook by clicking over here. There's some studying resources. There's the ability to have it read to you. Different homework. Mastery training is basically that memorization. Remember, we have a mastery training in every chapter. It's basically just a summary of that. There are flashcards to help you review that material as well. And our Applio homework system will get you to a lot of the same places that you'll get to over here. So that is sort of a short review. If you have any technical difficulties, I'm going to have some contact information for our customer service representative. If there's anything wrong with, say, the specific questions and not just accessing them or something like that, let me know. There may not be much that I can do about it again because this is a new system and I'm still figuring out what it's capable of. But at least if I have that awareness, there might be some kind of an adjustment I can make going forward, or, again, a way of accounting for that. So anyway, this is where you're going to spend a lot of your time when you're not watching me talk into a video screen. So familiarize yourself with it sooner than later and start it sooner than later. Again, self-pace, but pace yourself as fast as you can while still getting what you want out of it and still getting a sufficient amount of learning and moving ahead, especially early on when the material is a little bit easier. All right, that's all I've got for right now. So again, stay in contact about this stuff, but otherwise, please move on to the next video. See you there.